Hello. My dear, you know what's funny? Not the kind of funny that makes people laugh. The kind that makes them choke a little before they realize the sound coming out of their throat isn't laughter, it's regret. The town's full of that sound now. You hear it when you walk past them, a cough that's really an apology, a whisper that's really a confession. They never said it out loud, but they all feel it. They got you wrong. They mistook your quiet for weakness, your solitude for shame. Now the whole community looks like a mirror that finally cracked from staring at itself too long. The reflection's ugly, isn't it? They used to call you the outcast, the misfit, the strange one with too much fire behind the eyes. But today, today, they're seeing what that fire was really for. It wasn't destruction, it was purification. You were burning off everything fake before they even knew what authenticity meant. And now, look at them, all lined up in their polite little lives, clutching their routines like life jackets, while the flood of truth swallows their streets. They told themselves they were decent people. That was the lie that kept them comfortable. They called you reckless because you refused to kneel. They called you crazy because you refused to conform. They said you'd end up lost because you refused to belong. But who's lost now? Who's wandering the same blocks, haunted by the echoes of their own mockery? The laughter they threw at you became the ghost that follows them home. You didn't need revenge, they gave it to themselves. See, that's what they never understood about you. You never wanted their validation. You wanted clarity. And you got it. You saw through the costumes before the party even started. You saw the desperation behind their smiles, the envy behind their kindness, the rot behind their morals. And because you saw it, they had to paint you as the villain. You were their scapegoat, their entertainment, their way of saying, at least we're not like them. But deep down, every one of them knew they were exactly like you, just not brave enough to admit it. You walked alone, not because you couldn't fit in, but because you refused to shrink. And now, the curtain's come down, hasn't it? The masks have fallen. The same people who whispered your name with disgust now can't say it without trembling. They cross the street when they see you, not out of hatred, but out of guilt. You've become their mirror, and they can't stand the sight. Because when they look at you, they don't see failure anymore. They see freedom. And freedom terrifies slaves. They've spent their whole lives building cages out of gossip, shame, and imitation, and you broke yours without asking permission. You didn't just walk away from them, you walked above them. And now every step you take sounds like judgment. You want to know what real power is? It's walking through a place that once rejected you and watching every eye lower itself to the ground. It's hearing the silence that follows your footsteps. That's not fear, it's recognition. They know they misread the script. They know they mocked the only honest character in their play. They know the town's story ends with your name in it, carved not in stone, but in their conscience. That's why they avoid your gaze, because the truth about you exposes the lie about them. You didn't need to fight them. You just had to survive them, and survival is the loudest victory of all. They talk differently now. Have you noticed? The same voices that once filled the air with ridicule now whisper theories. Maybe they were right all along. Maybe we misunderstood. Maybe we should have listened. Maybe. That's the word that eats them alive. Because maybe means there was a choice. They chose the crowd over conscience. They chose convenience over courage. And now the bills come due. Every insult they threw, every rumor they spread, it's all back with interest. The interest of exposure, the interest of shame, the interest of finally realizing that your distance wasn't arrogance, it was protection. You never wanted to be above them. You just refused to drown with them. But they called your calmness pride, your boundaries cruelty, your solitude rebellion. And now they see the irony. You weren't escaping them. You were escaping what they would become. Look around you. The same faces now wear exhaustion instead of confidence. They age faster when they lie. They tire quicker when they pretend. The community looks like a festival that forgot why it started celebrating. The lights are still on, but the joy's gone out. Because truth doesn't let people sleep peacefully. It keeps the guilty awake. It keeps the envious restless. It keeps the cowardly defensive. And here you are, still standing, still silent, still unbothered. You don't need to raise your voice. Your existence already screams. That's why their eyes dart away when you pass. They feel the imbalance. You've become the gravity they can't resist or escape. You carry the weight of authenticity, and they're too light to orbit around it without trembling. That's what makes them ashamed. Not that you proved them wrong, but that you proved them irrelevant. You didn't fight for their respect. You forced them to earn your absence. Let's talk about fear, shall we? They used to think you were fearless because you didn't flinch when cornered. But fearlessness isn't about not feeling fear. It's about refusing to let fear dictate the narrative. You didn't remove fear. You redirected it. You made it work for you. Every lonely night, every rumor, every betrayal, they thought it was breaking you. It was building you. You learned to dance with discomfort, to sharpen your edges in their silence. And now that strength radiates off you like heat, burning through their facades. They call it intimidation, but it's really revelation. You've revealed what courage actually looks like, and it doesn't look like belonging. It looks like walking alone with purpose. You ever notice how shame changes posture? They hunch now. They lower their shoulders when you walk by. It's like gravity increased for them, but not for you. Their pride was a helium balloon, loud, visible, empty. Yours was iron, silent, steady, permanent. They float, you endure, and endurance always wins. The town was your trial, your crucible, your arena. You didn't just survive it, you rewired it. Every sneer, every laugh, every "who do they think they are" became part of your legend. And now the story has flipped. They're the ones asking that question, who are you? Not out of mockery, but out of awe. And you don't answer. That's the brilliance. Because the moment you start explaining, you invite them back into a conversation they no longer deserve. You don't owe them your reasoning. You don't owe them your forgiveness. You owe them nothing. You already gave them the gift of an example. Let them figure it out. Let them sit with their confusion, their envy, their disbelief. Let them write their own redemption arcs while you write your next chapter. They spent years defining you. Now they can spend the rest of their lives redefining themselves. They'll call it karma, but you and I know better. It's not cosmic justice, it's just exposure. When someone real walks through a fake world, everyone else looks counterfeit. You didn't curse them, you clarified them. The light you carry is merciless. It doesn't burn on purpose, it burns because it's pure. That's what purity does in a corrupt environment. It exposes, it purges, it humiliates. And the community? Oh, they're not dying because you hurt them. They're dying because you made them see themselves. The sickness isn't yours, it's theirs. You were just the mirror that refused to fog. And now you see it everywhere. The subtle panic, the desperate rebranding, the sudden humility, people pretending they always supported you, people rewriting history to make themselves look wise. Let them have their delusions, because deep down, they know the truth. You walked through their fire and came out untouchable. You didn't retaliate, you evolved. You didn't react, you recalibrated. You didn't escape the town, you transformed what town even means. Because wherever you go now, you set the tone. You define the atmosphere. You are the new standard. That's the final humiliation. They can't even gossip without referencing you anymore. The irony's delicious, isn't it? They built their identities around rejecting you, and now they define themselves by how close they can get to what they once despised. They mimic your words, your energy, your principles. They wear courage like a borrowed jacket. It doesn't fit, but it's all they have left. You didn't just survive their judgment. You became their syllabus. They study you now, not to understand, but to copy. Because deep down, they know there's no going back to ignorance. Once you've witnessed real authenticity, mediocrity feels suffocating. You ruined the illusion for them, and that's your legacy. Do you remember the nights you questioned if it was worth it? Every betrayal, every cold shoulder, every whisper, worth it. Because those moments were your forge. That pain trained you to see patterns others missed. It tuned your instincts to truth. And that's why you stand different now. Sharper, calmer, heavier, with awareness. The community doesn't understand that kind of stillness. To them, silence is guilt. To you, it's command. You don't shout anymore because you don't need to. The world shouts for you. Every rumor that flips into admiration, every critic that becomes a fan, that's the echo of victory. And maybe the most poetic part? You didn't plan it. You didn't chase revenge or seek approval. You just kept walking your truth. And truth has gravity. It pulls everything else into alignment. The ones who mocked you ended up orbiting you. The ones who doubted you ended up quoting you. The ones who excluded you ended up needing you. That's the cycle. The exile becomes the example. The rejected becomes the reference. And the crowd that once laughed now kneels, not in worship, but in acknowledgement. They see it now. They understand why you were alone, because real ones always are. So walk through that town tonight with your head high and your heart steady. The lights may flicker, the whispers may continue, but they all sound the same now. Admiration disguised as gossip. You don't have to prove anything. They already sentenced themselves to reflection. You just keep moving, keep shining, keep being the proof that solitude isn't punishment, it's purification. And when you feel that faint heat behind you, that's not hatred, that's embarrassment. That's the burn of realization spreading through a crowd that finally sees the difference between existing and living. They'll never admit it out loud, but they envy your peace more than they ever envied your power. Because power can be taken, but peace earned through self-acceptance is untouchable. You've built an empire inside yourself, and they're still renting space in each other's approval. That's why their eyes follow you now. That's why the gossip stopped sounding confident. You became the one thing their conformity could never kill. Proof that truth survives pressure. And now, as the sun sets over the same streets that once echoed with your humiliation, the light catches differently. It bends around you. It honors you. Because the world bends for those who never broke. And tomorrow you won't need to remind them. They'll wake up, look in the mirror, and see the reflection of who they pretended to be, and remember who actually lived it. That's your silent revolution. You didn't need fire or fury. You just needed endurance. You didn't need applause. You needed conviction, and that conviction turned their pride into ashes. You walk on, they watch. And for the first time, the town's noise isn't mockery, it's mourning. Mourning the versions of themselves they lost trying to defeat you. They finally know now, you weren't the villain, you were the verdict. And verdicts echo. They don't just end stories, they begin hauntings. The town breathes differently now. It's slower, heavier, like the air itself is ashamed to move too fast around you. Every window holds a watcher, every corner a confession. They look at you the way sinners look at candles, afraid of the flame, desperate for the light. Their laughter's gone. Their confidence has turned into a cough they can't hide. It's the sound of guilt trying to clear its throat. You walk past the bakery that once whispered your name with sugar-coated disgust, and the scent feels sour now. The same people who told each other that you were too much now flinch at their own reflections in the glass. That's the cost of pretending righteousness. You end up allergic to truth. Their mornings start with denial. Their nights end with replay. Every rumor they ever built has come back like a bad dream, each word wearing their own face this time. They called it gossip when they aimed it at you. Now it's confession when they say it to themselves. You didn't punish them. Reality did. That's the beauty of truth. It doesn't chase, it waits. It lets liars tie their own knots, and then watches them trip. The community built its pride like a tower, brick by brick, lie by lie. But they forgot the foundation was hollow. And when you stopped caring, when you stopped needing their approval, that's when the wind changed. One gust of authenticity, and the whole structure trembled. You didn't push it down, you just stopped holding it up. Now they live in the rubble. You can see it in their eyes, that haunted gleam of someone who finally realizes the show's over but can't find the exit. They keep replaying the moments they laughed at you, trying to convince themselves it was harmless. But conscience has a perfect memory. It doesn't forget the sound of cruelty, it just waits for silence to amplify it. And the silence around your name is deafening now. They're dying of something worse than regret. It's recognition. Recognition that everything they mocked was what they secretly wanted to be. You see, people don't hate what's wrong. They hate what they can't control. Your independence, your refusal to kneel, your calm defiance. It wasn't rebellion to them. It was exposure. You revealed how small their bravery really was. And now the mirror's cracked wide open, showing every compromise they made just to be liked. Watch how they move now, slower, cautious, polite to everyone, but hollow inside. They've started avoiding each other, as if shame might be contagious. The coffee shop that once hosted their little gossip circles is half empty these days. The laughter sounds forced. The walls remember too much. When someone mentions your name, the temperature changes. Cups rattle slightly. The silence between words grows thick, like smoke from a fire they can't admit they started. Some of them try to make peace in secret. Messages sent at odd hours. Hope you're doing okay. Didn't mean to take sides. But they're not apologizing to you. They're negotiating with their guilt. They want absolution without accountability. You read the words, smile and let them fade. Because forgiveness isn't a currency, it's a mirror too. And you don't hand mirrors to people who still close their eyes. The elders of the town, the ones who preached community and virtue, can't look each other in the eye anymore. Their sermons sound tired, their advice recycled. You dismantled their moral economy without saying a word. Because while they worshipped appearances, you worshipped authenticity. While they built reputations, you built resilience. And now reputation's gone bankrupt. No one trusts the smiles anymore. The children of the town grow up faster now. They ask dangerous questions. Why did everyone hate them? Why are they quiet now? Questions with answers the adults can't stomach. That's how truth spreads, not through speeches, but through discomfort. You turned discomfort into an epidemic. They wear their guilt like a fever, sweating through smiles, trembling at small talk. The grocery aisles feel colder now, not because the air changed, but because eyes don't meet anymore. Everyone's afraid to be seen, afraid that someone else might remember how cruel they were when cruelty was popular. And in that fear, they've started turning on each other, whisper chains snapping, alliances dissolving. The same tongues that ganged up on you are now slicing each other. Poetic, isn't it? The community that once united in mockery is now divided by shame. You don't even have to be there. Your absence does the work. You became the gravity pulling their pretenses apart. Rumors mutate fast when they lose a target. Some say you found success somewhere far away. Others swear you're still nearby, watching. The uncertainty drives them mad. They check every unfamiliar car, every shadow at the edge of the street. They're not afraid of you. They're afraid of what you represent, a life outside their cage. You were the living proof that conformity isn't safety, and that terrifies people addicted to comfort. You can sense the panic underneath their routines. The town's clock tower still chimes on schedule, but it sounds offbeat now. The rhythm's broken because deep down, they know they can't undo what they did. They can repaint the walls, rebrand the events, rename the committees, but guilt doesn't take new labels. It lingers, it stains, it becomes the new weather. And lately, it's been raining self-doubt. You see them trying to recreate the old warmth, organizing festivals, posting pictures, pretending everything's fine. But you can't rebuild joy on the bones of hypocrisy. Every celebration feels haunted. The music echoes off the empty places in their hearts where certainty used to live. They see you in everything, an unspoken presence. The town became your shadow long after you stopped looking back. Sometimes, in the late hours, they gather in small groups and speak your name. Softly, like a ghost story. They argue about who was really at fault. Some cry, some deny, some sit in silence because the truth doesn't need defense, it needs digestion, and it's eating them alive. You became the aftertaste of their arrogance, the reminder that cruelty ages poorly. And it's not just emotional. You can see the decay in their faces, the weight in their posture. People who lied for too long start wearing the shape of their lies. Their smiles no longer reach their eyes. Their laughter cuts off mid-sound, like they're afraid joy might expose them again. They wear exhaustion like makeup. Every "I'm fine" costs them another piece of authenticity. Meanwhile, you breathe clean, you walk light. You don't even need to speak for the truth to expand. Your existence is the audit they can't escape. They wanted spectacle. You gave them consequence. And consequence has a way of echoing through generations. Parents telling children not to repeat their mistakes. Friends warning each other not to judge too fast. Your name turned into a proverb without your permission. That's immortality. Not the fame they chased, but the kind that brands memory itself. The funniest part, they still can't admit it openly. pride won't let them. So they play a new game, pretend admiration. They quote your strength in their posts, mimic your tone in conversation, call it growth. But beneath the performance, the shame festers. They can copy your words, not your peace. Because peace, born from guilt's ashes, can't be imitated. It has to be earned. And they skipped the burning part. You can almost feel their thoughts trailing behind you when you pass through the town square. That's them. That's the one. The sentences stop there. What else can they say? They ran out of insults and never learned respect. Their language failed them, just like their courage did. All that's left is awe disguised as discomfort. They can't celebrate you because celebrating you means admitting they were wrong. And that's a pill pride never swallows. It just chokes on it. Look at how even the environment changed to reflect their conscience. The colors seem duller, the noise harsher. The town feels like it's holding its breath, because truth changes atmosphere. You didn't just change minds, you changed molecules. Shame has weight, and it's pressing down on every unspoken memory they share. You can see it in how they flinch at kindness now, like they don't trust it. Because when they were cruel, kindness stood against them. And now kindness wears your face. They're trying to rewrite the past collectively, but memory resists editing. Every denial cracks under the pressure of evidence. People remember how it felt when you were right there, unbothered, unshaken, staring through the noise like a prophecy in motion. They mocked that calm. Now they imitate it. But imitation without understanding is agony. It's a daily reminder that authenticity isn't contagious, it's earned. The breakdown's almost complete. You can sense it. The conversations are shorter, the smiles forced, the eyes tired. The community's running on fumes of self-forgiveness they never deserved. Some will leave, chasing new beginnings. Some will stay, trapped in repetition. But wherever they go, they'll carry you. You're the unfinished sentence in every story they tell. The lesson they never asked for, but can't forget. And in their private moments when no one's watching, I'd say they crumble. You'd be amazed at how many tears fall for the one they once called heartless. That's the irony of awakening. It always comes with mourning. They're not just mourning you. They're mourning who they were before you proved them wrong. And that pain, that's the cure they needed. So you let them feel it. You don't interfere. You don't correct. You let the weight of awareness do what time never could. Teach. Because the cruelest mercy is letting people live long enough to face themselves. They'll rebuild eventually, smaller, humbler, quieter. But the blueprint will forever have your fingerprints on it. The town's soul now shaped by the shadow of the one they tried to erase. And when you walk through again, one day, years later, you'll notice something subtle. Benches repainted, walls cleaned, children playing without fear. But beneath that calm, the adults still glance your way, eyes filled with a mix of reverence and remorse. They'll smile nervously, as if hoping you've forgotten. But you haven't, and you don't need to remind them. The atmosphere already does, because that's what legacy really is. Not a monument, but a mood. And your mood has become the weather of their conscience. Every sunrise reminds them of exposure. Every sunset reminds them of consequence. You didn't destroy the town. You refined it through shame. And refinement hurts. But it's the only path to clarity. So stand still for a moment and look around. What you're seeing isn't ruin, it's purification. They're not dying of embarrassment. They're being reborn through it. Painful, messy, necessary. And you? You don't gloat. You don't preach. You simply exist. Because existence, when it's true, is the most powerful sermon. Tomorrow the whispers will soften again, but not from comfort, from exhaustion. They've finally understood why you stood alone, not because you were arrogant, but because you were awake, and waking up in a sleeping town looks like rebellion until everyone starts dreaming your dream. And now, they dream it. But not the way you do. Theirs is a fever dream, frantic and blurry, filled with the echoes of everything they pretended not to know. The streets still look the same, but you can feel it. The air has been rewritten. Every breath they take tastes of realization. The laughter that once filled these corners has curdled into murmurs. You turned their hometown into a confessional. They speak quietly now, because loud voices sound dishonest here. You see it in their movements, the avoidance, the nervous tidying, the desperate kindness that arrives too late. They're not helping, they're compensating. They're trying to scrub away what they did to you. But guilt doesn't wash. It stains deeper the harder you rub. You walk among them like a ghost that never left, but came back, changed. They avert their eyes because your presence makes their inner noise deafening. You don't need to say, "I told you." They already hear it inside their heads, over and over, like a heartbeat they can't unhear. It's the rhythm of accountability, and that rhythm terrifies them. They start projects, charities, movements, all built on the ruins of what they once mocked. But you know the difference between redemption and rebranding. Redemption bleeds, rebranding hides. And this town has been hiding for so long that the act of facing daylight feels like punishment. Their small talk used to be a weapon, now it's a shield. They talk about weather, traffic, prices, anything but truth. Because truth brings your name with it, and your name. It doesn't belong to gossip anymore. It belongs to history. Every street corner, every whispered apology, every unfinished sentence carries it like a scar. They built a narrative to survive your absence. And then they discovered absence was the narrative. The silence you left became scripture. You stand at the edge of the square one evening, and for the first time, no one looks away. They look up instead, quiet, trembling, eyes wet but steady. That's how recognition begins. Not in applause, but in surrender. They don't clap, they exhale. It's the sigh of an illusion collapsing, and you, steady, unmoved, just nod once. That's all it takes. Forgiveness isn't a speech, it's restraint. You don't need to punish them. Living with awareness is the punishment. But awareness can evolve. The town begins to change, not out of pride, but necessity. They start telling the truth at dinner tables, admitting the envy, the jealousy, the fear. And with each confession, your shadow lightens. The fear becomes understanding. The embarrassment becomes humility. They begin to realize that the person they called reckless was actually free, and the one they called fearless was simply honest. They watch you and understand that solitude wasn't loneliness. It was integrity, refusing dilution. That's why you walked alone. Not because you couldn't belong, but because you wouldn't pretend. Soon you notice something subtle. New faces arriving, old ones leaving. The energy recalibrates. The children no longer inherit their parents' arrogance. They see you as a story of survival, not rebellion. That's when you know the transformation is real. Because legacies aren't loud, they're consistent. You didn't lecture them into change. You showed them what consequence looks like. You stood still long enough for truth to orbit back. That's courage, doing nothing while everything else exposes itself. The gossipers, the mockers, the self-appointed saints, they wander differently now. You can almost hear the thoughts trailing them. If only we'd listened. If only we hadn't laughed. The words "if only" are the town's new anthem, and you're the conductor. Every breath they take plays another note of reflection. It's not vengeance, it's evolution. You became the measurement of conscience. That's the highest form of power, existing so truthfully that others must evolve or decay. Sometimes you catch fragments of conversation. They were right from the start. They never needed us. They just knew. Those sentences hang in the air like confessions to a silent priest. You don't interrupt. You let them finish their own sermons. Because finally, they're preaching what you've always lived. You didn't need followers. You needed witnesses. And now you have an entire town of them. Reborn, humbled, baptized in their own shame. At night, the city lights flicker differently. It's quieter, cleaner. The air feels thinner, honest. That's what happens after collective guilt. It clears the static. You can hear the hum of new beginnings under the rubble. The same roads that once led you out now lead others toward themselves. That's the revolution you started without trying. The revolution of reflection. You didn't conquer them, you cured them. And yet deep down, you know they'll never forget. Shame this deep doesn't fade. It becomes architecture. Every building, every path holds memory. They'll teach your name with caution, speak of you in metaphors. Be careful who you mock. They'll tell their children. Sometimes the one you laugh at ends up writing the ending. And they'll be right. You did write it. With patience instead of fury, endurance instead of revenge. That's what makes it sting. It's poetic justice written in stillness. As dawn breaks, you feel the world adjusting again. The sunlight hits your face without resistance. And for the first time, it feels like the town isn't fighting it. The air forgives. The ground feels lighter. Somewhere an apology is whispered, not in words but in changed behavior. That's how redemption really sounds. Quieter than guilt, stronger than pride. You take one last look around. The faces, the corners, the shadows that once whispered your downfall, and realize the irony. They thought they buried you. Instead, they planted you. And now everything growing here bends toward your light. You don't smile out of ego. You smile out of understanding. Because this was never about triumph. It was about truth finally finding a home. So you turn to leave. Not out of rejection, but completion. The town doesn't chase you this time. They watch, still, reverent, aware. They finally see it. Why you were alone. Why you were fearless. Because fearless isn't loud. It's steady. It's the ability to walk through judgment and stay pure. They tried to shame you and ended up cleansing themselves. They tried to expose you and ended up revealing their own hollowness. You were the lesson they didn't want, but desperately needed. And as you disappear beyond the last streetlight, the silence that follows isn't empty. It's sacred. It's the sound of understanding settling into place. The town isn't dying anymore. It's awakening. And you, untouched, unbroken, unmistakably alive, carry on. Not as a memory of defiance, but as proof that truth doesn't need protection. It just needs time. That's your victory. Not their applause, not their remorse, just the knowledge that the fire they feared was never meant to burn them. It was meant to light the way,